This is NDTV and you are watching NDTV Prime.
In a city, in a country meant for people who love to live life in the fast lane. I'm Ankur Warikoo and I choose to be a Singapore insider.
Have you driven such cars before?
I have never. How does one experience passion in Singapore? Perhaps one way is cruising through the sights of the city in a Lamborghini.
Why would anyone zip line for 60 kilometers an hour for almost a kilometer?
Or by experiencing it 75 meters above the ground from a zip line.
Crazy! Because you live only once.
How about living the way Singapore does, through their taste buds? I'm here at the Tiong Bahru market, through one-of-a-kind experiences created by a generation which understands the future.
So we're going to be making one of our best sellers today. It's called the Pineapple Rug.
Life in Singapore is filled with delightful surprises. You never know what you're going to get. Yesterday, I lived up my passion for adventure. Today, I look at how Singaporeans do what they love. When you think of Singapore, you think of vertical modern structures, but that's not always the case. I'm here on the stairs of the National Gallery, Singapore, and the country's rich heritage emanates from these walls, which have witnessed many of Singapore's greatest historical events. This beautifully restored building used to be the Singapore's Supreme Court and City Hall in earlier decades. Within this building is housed the single largest collection of Southeast Asian art. And this isn't the only traditional thing that we will witness here in Singapore on Singapore Insider. Kun Seng Road. This street in Singapore is a beautiful mix of Chinese, Malay and British influence. The colors here represent very Malay standards. The phoenix is of Chinese origin and the architectural style is very British. When the Chinese traders came onto the local island and married the local girls, their firstborn generation created a unique identity of their own, which continues to live today. They are known as the Peranicans. Not far from the city, in a charming corner of eastern Singapore, I discover Peranakan culture. The Peranakan heritage comes alive in its food, architecture, art and crafts. The Peranakan culture is not thousands of years old, it's only several hundreds of years. And back then, Chinese traders had commissioned this art piece. It's fascinating how I'm in the middle of this extremely rare art form in this massive cosmopolitan unit called Singapore, and yet humbled by what is one of the 3 remaining pieces of this art form globally. This is Peranakan porcelain. It's made in China, but it's the only porcelain in the world that's not sold in China. It's reflective of true Peranakan culture. It is also unique in the fact that China has a strong influence, and yet you would not find this porcelain anywhere in China except the spot that I'm standing at. This is Peranakan Chinese beadwork, one of the embroidery skills that young nonyas, women of the Peranakan culture, used to indulge in. It's extremely fine, thousands of beads painstakingly put together, some as small as 1 millimeter in diameter. Mothers used to teach young nonyas this art because it was almost a form of dowry, if you will, that represented whether a young nonya was ready for marriage or not in the Peranakan culture. I'm looking at what Peranakan women wear over the top. It's unique in the sense that every single item made from that particular pattern and size, it's one of its kind. So the next time you're in Singapore and you find an item that you love and it fits you well, grab it because it's destined only for you.
Culture is constantly evolving and changes with time. Nowhere is this more apparent than in its cuisine. I met a young man who has turned his lifelong passion for food into a career in the kitchen. By preserving the traditional flavors of his childhood while boldly pushing culinary boundaries, he's created the world's first Michelin-starred Peranakan restaurant.
Peranakan is really in my blood. I come from that background where my grandma and mom, they cook every day very tasty dishes that I always remember growing up. I wanted to be a chef, and I was more into this French, Western, fine dining kind of style of food. But then there are a lot of things that happened that made me say that, you know, I still like my food. I wanted to explore, discover, and cook them for people.
So tell us more about the Peranakan cuisine. What's so special about it? I believe it's not truly Malay, it's not truly Chinese, but of course a beautiful combination.
Yes, correct. You know, we are a little simple Malay village before,
Yeah.
long time ago. And then because of our location, a lot of traders came down to do trade here. So they brought a whole lot of influencers and people from different parts of the world just to do trades. They came here and they probably saw the local women were very pretty, and that's how they got married.
Right.
And that started the race of Peranakans.
Okay.
So there was, you start to see the influence of Chinese and Malay in their costumes, in their customs, in their furniture, in their houses, and as well as the food. And that's really where that kind of beautiful marriage of flavors. It's like the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
The nice things from the Chinese side and the Malay side that is together. And that's really a very simple story to understand what Peranakan culture and food is.
Most of these cuisines,
Yes.
or recipes rather, have come in from generations, but they have the dash of Malcolm on them. Like,
Yes.
have you innovated and have modernized them?
Our style is to really respect the tradition, respect the culture and the principles behind it. And so from the basis of making chili paste or curry paste, we can tweak the proportions or even the style of it and the ingredients that match with it to create a totally new Peranakan dish. To me, that's what I like about food.
For me, Candlenut is going back to the roots while establishing itself as a unique identity.
Yeah.
And almost 70% of the patrons that come here are locals.
Locals.
What's their reaction to this cuisine if they're having it for the first time?
You know, you have two camps, you know. One is like, wow, I really don't like this at all because this is not the flavors they grew up with. And then you have the other extreme, which is like, wow, this is so fresh, it's so new, and it's not boring, right? I really believe for us to carry on tradition, sometimes we just have to evolve just a little bit to make it relevant. And being too traditional, you risk of losing it. But again, if you are too modern, then you lose the soul of the food. So the challenge is really the balance. Yeah, I'm very happy that locals come and support us. It means a lot.
We are perhaps filling up a gap, a material culture void in Singapore. So you have food that is that tells of the Singapore story, language that tells of the Singapore story, but how about objects and products?
How much does a bespoke suit usually cost?
On average, customers usually spend about 3,000 to 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have free performances every single day of the year at the Concourse. So anyone who comes here, they want to enjoy the Esplanade, they can just drop by to watch a performance.
Everyone's trying to recognize Singapore has this unique tradition that they wish to maintain. Yet at the same time, they're mature to see how it's evolving and modernizing itself. And it's a beautiful blend, what I'm witnessing right now. I'm here at the Super Mama store, which is a unique representation of design. And Edwin here, who runs Super Mama, is a truly accomplished industrial designer and now an entrepreneur.
It's called Super Mama because it is a gift for my wife. We decided 6 years ago to spend more time with the family.
Okay.
So we both quit our jobs, sold our home, to start a little shop like this so they can have more flexible time with our family.
So Super Mama is actually your wife, and it all started because you wanted to spend time with your family, which is just such a nice thing to do, but now it's become this really large, beautiful representation of what Singapore is, but through material design.
We are perhaps filling up a gap, a material culture void in Singapore.
Right.
So you have food that tells of the Singapore story, language that tells of the Singapore story, but how about objects and products? So that is when we start to work with many local designers to design local items like a homeware, fashion wear, and house them within one shop called Super Mama. So what you see here over the table are porcelain pieces, objects that tells a lot of stories. So every one of them tell their perspective of Singapore. We are primarily a nation of borrowed cultures, but when you take a closer look into it, it is something different, something special, something modern. So a marrying of different cultures, marrying of what is in the future with what is in the past, with something that is very familiar, yet something that is a little bit foreign, you know, and all coming together in one pot, in one space. How these cultures come together and how they infuse to create a new language, a new design language, I think that is my interest.
Wonderful.
And much like Candlenut, young, inspired Singaporeans in other fields are also taking over family traditions and legacies, evolving them for the modern day.
So you come from a family of bespoke tailors, Dylan?
Yes, I took over my dad's bespoke business in 2010. Okay. He's a tailor for about 40 years. For a suit from start to finish, usually it will take about 8 to 10 weeks, depending on how complex the customer's body type is. Between 3 to 4 fittings at least.
How much does a bespoke suit usually cost?
On average, customers usually spend about 3,000 to 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah. It really depends on the cloth that is being used.
Really?
As well. The two major ones are from UK and Italy.
Okay.
Yes. So most of the cloths, I would say 90%, come from these two areas.
Right. It was great to meet you, Dylan. Thank you so much for this.
Nice to meet you too.
So when one thinks of Singapore, there are these cliches that come to one's mind, whether it's the Universal Studios, whether it's Sentosa, whether it's the Marina Bay Sands. But my time here at Singapore has told me that Singapore is a lot more about its people and its culture. I'm here at the Esplanade, which truly represents the people of Singapore. It was made for the people. Dini here represents Esplanade, and why don't you tell us how this entire concept came up when it did?
In the 70s, we wanted to have an art center, but we couldn't do so because education, housing, economy wasn't stable yet. back in the 90s, when everything's pretty much settled, everyone's comfortable in their lives, we decided to rethink an art center here in Singapore, and that's when we decided to have Esplanade. Mr. Russell Johnson, he's an acoustician. He actually designed the concert hall, and this was his last work that he was involved in.
Wow.
And we are very proud of that.
Wonderful. Great. The concert hall is the main thing about the Esplanade.
Yes, it is the main thing about Esplanade.
Nice.
Because the sound there is really good, and it's natural sound. So wherever the artist is playing, the sound travels from the musical instruments straight to people's ear.
So no speakers?
No speakers at all.
Wow. And I'm also told that most of the performances here are actually free for the general public.
Correct. We have about 3,000 performances here in the Esplanade, and 70% of it is free.
3,000 performances a year?
Yes.
Wow.
And we have free performances every single day of the year at the Concourse. So anyone who comes here, they want to enjoy the Esplanade, they can just drop by to watch a performance.
One altitude is where my travel ends. At the world's highest al fresco bar and nightclub, famed for its signature cocktails and a view like no other, I promise to return to the city to experience more of the still untold stories of Singapore. Singapore, a city I fell in love with. Over these last 2 days, I've met with some amazing Singaporeans who are blazing a trail and making their passions possible. Entrepreneurs such as Vijay, Edwin, and Edward inspiring me with their drive and creativity. Along with Dylan and Malcolm, who have turned family traditions into world-renowned legacies. There's no place like this. Come, awaken your passions and live up your dreams here. Be a Singapore Insider.